Good morning, Rabbi.
How are you? Nice to be with you.
Rabbi, would you please tell us since when Museum of Tolerance is in existing here in Los Angeles?
The Museum of Tolerance opened in February of 1993. It was actually opened, the ribbon was cut by Federico Mayor, who was then the head of UNESCO, came from Paris. And of course, our namesake, the late Simon Wiesenthal, came from Vienna to open the museum. Since then, over 6 million people have come through the doors. Over 95% of them are not of the Jewish faith. It's a museum for all people. And it's, for example, last night we had a very interesting program, a memorial for Hiroshima, about the time that President Obama and Prime Minister Abe were visiting Hiroshima site. So we have a very diverse program. The museum, of course, also deals with American social history and the problems that we have confronted of racism throughout the existence of the United States and how to deal with it, worldwide issues of human rights. But at the core, of course, is going back in history and learning the very difficult, sometimes brutal lessons from the Nazi Holocaust.
How did you get these pieces of historical things all over this museum? How did you get them?
Well, it's a good question. We didn't sit down one day and say, you know, why don't we build a museum? We actually opened in 1978 a small museum on the Holocaust. At the time, after Yad Vashem in Israel, it was the largest Holocaust center in the English-speaking world. It was 3,200 square feet. The Museum of Tolerance presentation space is 10 times that size. But by the mid-1980s, we noticed that young people were not reading the typical photo and caption. This is way before the internet. And so we decided that we were going to build the next museum that would be more engaging of the visitor and less text. Today, most museums are that way, but back then it was a bit of a revolution. And the second piece of it was we asked ourselves the question, okay, someday it'll be the year 2000. Will anybody still care about the events of World War II and the Holocaust? And if the answer is yes, then maybe in addition to our story, we need to broaden our commitment so that when people come into the museum, everyone is going to feel a sense of empowerment in some way about what their families or their group may have experienced as well. So to be very clear, we don't mix everything into one stew. You know, Hiroshima is not Auschwitz, and human rights abuses and hate crimes are not genocide. So nonetheless, the whole idea of this museum is to get people involved with personal responsibility, critical thinking, and increasingly for young people, because we're reaching the point where the individuals who went through World War II are leaving the world stage. The survivors who speak to the kids won't be with us forever. To give a context for the younger generations to learn from the past in order to build a better future. Now, the Museum of Tolerance is the educational arm of the Simon Wiesenthal Center. We are, as you know, a rather activist NGO at the UN, at UNESCO. We're very outspoken about issues relating, of course, to anti-Semitism, and also an area of our expertise has to do with how extremists use internet technologies and social media to promote their causes as well. So we're a very activist organization, but the museum is not. It's a teaching place. It's not a place of politics. We try to keep the door wide open to all people who want to come and learn. And I'm very happy to report to you that we've never taken an advertisement out in a newspaper. The educators, the parents, the students who come understand and absorb the message, and there's a very, very strong word of mouth. And of course, we also have many heads of state and leaders like Dalai Lama. The late King Hussein not only visited here with his family, but was a member of the Museum of Tolerance. So we're in a great location, Los Angeles, which is the second city of almost every group in the world, including Persians, Jews, Mexicans, Filipinos, you name it. We are the second city. So this is a kind of crossroads of the world, and a wonderful opportunity for us to hear, and for us to hear and absorb the interests and concerns of others.
Rabbi, what's your position about the exhibition of Holocaust cartoons in Islamic Republic of Iran? I mean, the second exhibition, which was occurred just last few weeks ago.
So to put it first in a broader context, Holocaust denial, when you think about the denial of Holocaust, one of the things that the Nazis did was to have millions of pages of documents explaining, confirming what they were doing. They were detail-oriented. There was even footage from that. When you talk about the most documented crime in human history, it is the Nazi Holocaust. So, when we talk about denial of the Holocaust, we can understand that there are two possibilities of the motivation behind it. Number one, as some of the academics, like Arthur Butts at Northwestern University 20 years ago, I think, told CNN, I don't believe in Auschwitz because I'm more comfortable not believing it. So in order not to have to confront the reality of what took place, if you're smart enough, quote unquote, if you have the word capability, the imagery to manipulate. So if you want to be in self-denial, that's part of it. And in his case, probably because he doesn't like Jews. But there are also deniers of the Holocaust who basically say the Holocaust didn't happen, and given half a chance, I would like to finish the job. And I'm afraid that the Iranian regime, by virtue of their other threats, falls primarily into the second category, while simultaneously accusing Israelis of being Nazis. So there was no Holocaust, but if there are Nazis, it's the Israelis, and if the true victims are in fact the Palestinians. That's the state policy of a government. We wish it wasn't so. It's very corrosive. It definitely impacts the Jewish people, and I would say historic truth in a negative way. And we now live in the internet-driven world. So everything local is global, and everything global is local. And I think that actually the regime understands that quite well. And the launching of these Holocaust cartoon contests is, from their perspective, very clever, because first, it hurts the enemy. It's a propaganda attack that denies the victims even the right to call themselves that and to mourn their dead. It denigrates the Jewish people as being a bunch of liars and crooks. And at the same time, it enables them to signal the Palestinians, the Arab world, and much of the Muslim world that the Iranian regime is in the front lines of the battle against the clever Zionists, and this is the way to go. So from their perspective, it doesn't cost very much. And I'm afraid that they read the situation quite accurately, because in my mind, the country that has the biggest responsibility to take them on is Germany. Generally speaking, Germany has taken its historic responsibilities quite seriously. They've taught and continue to teach their younger generations their historic responsibility for, in conjunction with the Nazi-era crimes. But it would seem that when it comes to Iran, probably that business contracts uber alles So we would like to see more pushback from Germany, from the European Union, from other entities. And I absolutely believe that if there was a geopolitical cost to this rather cynical ongoing campaign, the Iranian government would stop it. And if there will never be a cost, they'll probably just figure out ways to continue to up the ante. So when you combine these launching of these kinds of cartoons that show in an emotional way the big lie of debunking that 6 million Jews weren't murdered, but presenting it in a way in which it reaches you in less than 3 seconds in a political cartoon or on a website. Every time you repeat that big lie, you're going to convince someone, and even if they know in their hearts of hearts that it's true, nonetheless it's sent out as a signal to people who hate Israel and hate Jews that they should respect the Iranian regime as being leaders in their camp.
Thank you, Rabbi, that you separate the Iranian regime with Iranian nation. But unfortunately, Iranian people pay the cost. What's your suggestion?
Well,
my last question.
We're very familiar. You know, one of the great things of being in Los Angeles, where you have such a huge Iranian presence across the board, you know, a significant Jewish community, but way beyond, that, you know, you have a chance to be exposed to Iranian culture. Once in a while, lucky enough to be invited to a wedding that goes till 4 o'clock in the morning. Look, Iran, we can talk about the following: Persian, Chinese, Indian, Jewish. These are the ancient histories. We are all proud people with a long, winding road of history behind us. You don't have to wear it as a chip on your shoulder. And also that Iran is a very diverse country with many different nationalities, ethnicities, and religious attitudes. So the tragedy of having this regime that uses theology as a weapon, first and foremost on its own people, is a tragedy. They're not fooling anyone. We know that there are really, in a sense, two Irans: the official picture that's shown and the people. And, you know, with Mao, he ran China for 50 years. As soon as he went, the historic friendship between the Jews and the Chinese took about 5 minutes to reconnect. I feel very confident that when the Iranian people have the support of the international community and are able to transition to a truly democratic nation, those historic relationships that go back thousands of years won't take very long to reconnect.
Hello. Isn't it nice to see your bright and eager faces? Here we are in the tolerance section of the museum, so it's pretty clear you're tolerant people, not prejudiced. You look like perceptive people, above average. I mean, you gotta be smart or you wouldn't be at a museum in the first place, right? Unless they're here by mistake. And I bet you already know that tolerance is how well we accept practices and beliefs which are different from our own. What is this, Sunday school? Of course we do have limits, and we should. Why should we accept the lousy way certain groups drive, not to mention how the you-know-who's do business?
Don't you hate being hassled by the homeless? Get a job.
I mean, sure, some of them are homeless, but let's face it, you can tell which ones are just lazy, right? Shiftless, lazy thieving. And as for those people whose habits are a little peculiar, sanctimonious hypocrites. The less said about them, the better, know what I mean? But I can tell you're not like that. You're my kind of people, bright, sensitive, geniuses. So, it's time to step through the door. You know which one to choose, don't you? And remember, I like you.